Hello and welcome to another edition of Choose to Challenge. I am LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group, as well as principal of the Bradford Group Consulting. And I'm so excited about coming to you for another amazing edition of Choose to Challenge, one of my favorite platforms. Why? Because this is a platform where we are challenging ourselves and you to come against the systems, the institutions, the mindsets, the limiting beliefs that we may have that are preventing us from elevating and expanding to the best and highest version of ourselves. Today, I have a very special guest, Ms. Gail Dixon, who will be joining me. And she is a major influencer, an influencer in helping us to understand that whisper, that inner voice, that voice that was intended to explode on the world stage of our lives, so that we can have impact, influence, and perhaps even income in our lives. I'm going to bring Gail on in a moment, but before I do so, I would like to give a special salute to our sponsor, Freedom Travel Diva, as well as Help Heal Humanity.
The past 5 years, Help Heal Humanity has successfully run an elementary school in Canaan, Haiti. Due to COVID-19, the political unrest, and the recent earthquakes, food is scarce. The students attending our program are coming to school starving, and therefore causing a disruption in their academic goals. We need your help, now more than ever, to provide these students with the nourishment they need to continue their education. Our goal is to raise $100,000 so we can feed 100 kids lunch daily and send them to school in the upcoming year. Thank you for your support.
Hello, Gail. How's it going?
It's great, LaWanna. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me. I know you've had a full day, and that you are gracing our stage is truly an honor. Thank you for saying yes.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
For our audience who are being introduced to you for the very first time, Gail is a leader, an influencer, a woman who is on a mission to help us hearken to that small, still voice so that we can resonate within our truth, within our place of authenticity, not being fearful of vocalizing our truth, whatever it may be. I love that she comes with such a sweet spirit that there's really no judgment, but it's all about acceptance and in love. She is a speaker, a teacher, an influencer, a motivator, an encourager, a woman who is carrying and waving forever that banner of love and connectivity. And we're going to get into that conversation. And she's also the leader of the movement called the Heart's Voice Movement. Welcome, Gail.
Thanks, LaWanna. You know, it's so important, I think, these days when there is so much pain in the world, for us to get in touch with our own hearts and with the hearts of others, because our hearts are wounded. The heart of the world is wounded, and we need to do whatever it is we can do to heal that.
Yes. And I think as you've mentioned, starting with getting into a space where we can hear ourselves, right? Shutting off all the noise that's out there, the distractions, getting out of the comparison-itis, because as you and I mentioned, we can have individuals on the grand stages of the world, these amazing orators and people who are influencers and just have masses following them. But when we look at within our own sphere of influence, if we change one life, Gail, through speaking our truth, we can actually influence the next generation.
Absolutely. You know, my friend Sammy Blindell talks about it in her one drop movement, which is that each of us is only one drop, but together we're the ocean. And when you think about how one drop drops into the pond of water and the ripples roll out, and the effects of that one little pebble dropping in the water can go sometimes for miles. Or the other metaphor people use is the wings of the butterflies in the rainforest who bring on the winds of the Santa Ana. We are all connected because we are all created. And so when we hear deep in our hearts that essence of ourselves that came with our creation, that essence is a message. I call it a master message that gives our life meaning and purpose. And part of our reason for being is to bring that message to life in the way that we live in connection and harmony with others. And some of us find what that message is when we're very, very young. We know what we're about. We know why we're here. I remember in 4th grade, I knew I was meant to be a teacher. And I'm still teaching. I'm doing it different ways, but I'm still teaching. Some people don't find it until very late in life. But everybody has a reason for being. And everybody has a story to tell and a song to sing. And it doesn't come from their head, and it doesn't come from their gut. It comes from their heart. It comes from their spirit, the divine spark in their heart. And so part of what I do, part of my work in the world, is to help people to hear their own hearts and find the ways to speak them aloud so that other people can hear that heart too, and to listen with their hearts to other people.
Now, that right there is probably one of the biggest challenges people have. Like you said, listening with their hearts, because then you're allowing yourself to be open, non-judgmental. You're allowing yourself to receive. But when you're listening with your head, you're already guessing what the person is going to say, the path that conversation is going to go, and you're gearing up for when you're going to jump in, right?
Right. Exactly. And I have a photograph that sits in my file of photographs that I use sometimes, which I find very interesting. And that is in the photograph, the left ear and the right ear are set up right next to each other. And if you put the two ears together, they form a heart. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yes. So let's talk about, before you find your voice, finding yourself. And one of the things that I found in leading Celebrate You is so many women in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s are still grappling with the who am I? And why am I here? Why do you think it's so challenging, especially for women, to really say, this is me and I'm okay and I love me?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is that we live in a really noisy world. There are a lot of voices coming at us, and they come at us in a lot of tones and feelings and vibrations and emotions. And there are voices of should and ought and must and won't. There are voices of anger and frustration and separation and destruction. There are voices of fear, voices of pain. In all of that noise, it's hard to hear an internal voice that doesn't have a megaphone or a microphone. It's hard to hear it. And I think that we are conditioned in our society to define ourselves and our life's purpose based on what I call the 3 R's. the roles, the responsibilities, or the relationships we have in our life. And so we craft a reality, an I am statement, based on those things. I am a doctor. I am a mother. I am an attorney. I am John's wife, Mary's mother. I am responsible for, I lead this. That's how we define ourselves. The problem is that those things are transient and dependent on others. They are not inherent to us. They're things we earn or acquire or strive for, but they're not necessarily things that last. So we lose sight and lose sound for finding the what we are regardless of who else is around. And that what we are is about our purpose and our values and our essence. I talk about myself as the heart's voice because I believe I was put on this earth to be the spokesperson for how important it is to speak from the heart. And that is, I can be the heart's voice in any role, in any relationship, with any responsibility, because it's who I am and how I am in the world. With all the noise, it's hard to find the space and the time to get silent enough to listen for that essence. And you have to get quiet to hear deep inside.
Now, this month is the National Great Outdoors Month, and one of the things that I've been challenging individuals in the Celebrate You community is get outside, tune into nature. It is amazing what you hear when you step away, right? Put away the TV, the phone, social media, and just be in God's glory.
Well, exactly. And that's because when we are out in the created world, alone and apart from other human beings, there is no demand and no expectation. There is only coexistence with another creation.
Yes.
When I am out in nature, I coexist with the trees and the flowers and the streams and the birds. But the birds and the trees and the streams are not judging me. They're not demanding that I do or be or say or think anything. They are there, and we are there with them. And that gives us the space to hear our own essence.
I love that. As you were talking, it made me think of a story of an individual who was talking about finding your purpose. And when you find the essence of who you are and you're able to show up as an active participant in your own life, you're like that apple tree, right? The apple tree isn't trying to be an orange tree or a papaya tree. It's an apple tree. And the individual who gave this talk, he said, and so that apple tree just joyfully keeps on appling. And so, we have to find a way to find our own internal apples and be okay that that's how we were created to be and what we were created to do, and not worry about what Gail happens to be doing or what Nancy is doing. It's what are you doing with this amazing gift called life?
Yeah. Theodore Roosevelt said something, and you brought it up in the comparison. And it's so true. It's such a true saying. Comparison is the thief of joy. The minute that you enter into the comparative space, you have set up a win-lose, good, bad, or good and better, greater, lesser. But you've set up separation. You've set up contrast, that phrase, compare and contrast, that they always put on the essay exams in school, because comparison invites contrast.
Yes.
Well, what we want to invite is not contrast, but connection. And in comparison, we can only be connected with a small selection of folks very like us. That would limit our world tremendously. If I were only connected to the people who were the Gailest Gail, my world would be pretty small.
I agree. This past week, I took my niece and nephew, and one of my bucket lists was to stay in a treehouse.
Nice.
So we did a treehouse in Tennessee, and just by, I think, God's design, the internet went out. I mean, right when we got in, and the kids, what do? Because they're both 16, grab their devices, and they're like, Auntie Wanda, there's no internet. And I said, no, there isn't. What did we do? I said, well, welcome to my world and how I grew up. But it was the most amazing time. So I'm taking this back to what you said about connection, that we could have still enjoyed each other, right? But now we were really aware and present with each other in a way that social media and this technology that the kids are wedded to doesn't allow us to do anymore.
Right.
And for 2.5 days, there was no technology. It was just us having fun things to do, watching TV, popcorn, playing board games, just enjoying each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if there had been the opportunity for the noise and the intrusion of the devices and of the internet, you wouldn't have had the opportunity for those conversations and for that connection. And I think we forget that we can turn the button off.
Yes.
We forget. And, we've created such an instant society and instant demand. I mean, I can remember having a boss who reamed me out once because it took me 22 minutes to respond to a text. Now, in the old days, in the days I was first in the working world, it might have taken me 22 hours to respond to a phone call. It was before the days of email. But he was angry because he didn't have his response in 22 minutes.
Wow.
There's barely time to breathe in 22 minutes. But we have created that expectation for ourselves, and just the sheer vibration and intensity of the lights and the sounds and it's like we're living in Las Vegas all the time. All of that clamor around us. It is no wonder that we can't hear each other.
Exactly.
And it is no wonder sometimes that then when we try to get through to each other, we have to speak so loudly and so forcefully and in such a demanding way that we lose the essence of softness and the essence of gentleness, because we have to break through all that noise.
Yeah.
But we have a choice. And
that's so true. And the example that I was giving, with my niece and nephew, the most beautiful moment that I saw was got up in the morning, and there was this beautiful deck, and you're just looking out onto the forest, and they had a hot tub, and the kids were in the hot tub and their eyes were closed. And I said, is everything okay? And Madison said, shh, we're meditating.
I love it.
So I just stepped back in and allowed them that space. I thought, how amazing. I didn't have to tell them, let's get quiet, let's tune into they just felt the urge. I think nature, God is calling us in so many ways if we choose to lean in.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
So, for someone who says, Gail, I hear you, I know who I am, I think I know my purpose, but I'm finding that it's hard for people to hear me. People are always shutting me down when I'm trying to speak, especially in the workplace. What do I do?
I have a process that I call name it, frame it, and claim it. So the first thing you do is get clear on the essence, the content of what that message or purpose is for you. Sometimes we do an exercise thinking, can you express it in 10 words or less? But think about giving it a name, just as, I love the story in Genesis where Adam is naming all the creatures. And it's like, once they had a name, they knew what they were supposed to be. The rhinoceros was off being the rhinoceros, and the giraffe being the giraffe, and the anteater, the anteater. All of that happened with the power of naming. So first name it and define it for yourself. That's the content. And that's about the I piece. Then we frame it. We find the language in which what we know can be transferred and heard to somebody else. And that's about who needs to hear it, what's the language that they speak. Literally, do they hear logic or do they hear emotion? Do they hear urgency or do they hear planning? What's the context of that? Do they hear striving or do they hear allowing? What is that? And we put language around that. And then it's claim it. Then it is make the declaration. And the declaration is not just standing on the mountaintop or from the pulpit or the podium. Sometimes the declaration is living into it, living by those values, finding the behaviors and the relationships that make that truth in you come to being. It really is about living whole, finding the way in which what you know in your heart gets shared with others and lived into reality. And I sometimes talk about the fact that the message, if you're looking at crafting a message, if, for example, you have a cause that you want to advocate for or a change you want to make in the world, you talk about choose to challenge. If you're challenging an existing reality and saying, I want change in the world, you have to have a message that does three things. The first is the message has to command attention. So you have to be strong enough and say it enough that it wakes people up and pulls them away from all those other voices that are competing. After you command attention, you create connection. That's when you craft that language, that frame that makes people say, yes, I'm in that space too. I want that too. I believe that too. And then the message compels people to action. So command attention, create connection, compel action. And the action may be believe this. If someone is trying to be persuasive in a speech, the action may be do this. I think about climate change activists when they're taking a message out. They want us to do something or to not do something, but they want us to reduce, reuse, recycle, compelling us to action. It's not enough to say in our heads, oh gosh, we're polluting the earth, we're not doing well. They want us to act. And so we want to live that into being. When I think about creative artists, they first get that stirring of emotion in themselves, and then they find the expression of the medium and they write the song or the poem or paint the canvas. but it doesn't become real. They don't stake their claim to that truth until they put their art and their creation in front of somebody else. Until someone hears the symphony or views the painting, it hasn't claimed its purpose. The same way for the teacher. You know, I've been really feeling so much compassion for teachers these days after the school shootings, and thinking how, you know, so many teachers have in their hearts that message of wanting to make sure that children know that they matter, wanting to make children know that they count in the world. And for them, it may be that moment where the teacher says to a student, "Good job. I knew you could do it." Or the moment when the teacher ultimately in that classroom said, "Come here and be safe, and I will shelter you with my very life to keep you safe." We don't all live in the extremes and the great heroism. We don't all speak from pulpits or podiums, but we all have that peace in our hearts that says, "I'm here, I matter, and I matter for something that matters to me, and I make it known." And that's what I call speaking with the heart's voice.
Yes. And I think when we all reflect back on our lives and different parts of the journey, we know that there's a message that we heard that was that pivotal message that shifted our lives, changed our lives, right? There was something. And I know for me, and it's amazing because I still live by these two principles. And it was when I graduated from high school. My mom said something to me, my father said something to me. And my mom said to learn from the mistakes of others because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And I didn't really understand what it meant at that time, but as I grew, I get this, you know, be observant, watch what's happening. And then my father said, find something in life that you love so much you'd be willing to do for free and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right.
And so those two things, along with other messages, when I really think about my life and when I've made key changes and shifts, there was a whisper that either came from an external source or inside, right? That told me, I need you to go left. I need you to go right. I need you to do something different. And I love what you said, that we all are connected and we all have a role in expressing our voice, however we can express ourselves. We are meant to be expressive beings, right?
Right.
Even, and some people will have challenged me, well, LaWanna, well, what if someone can't speak? Well, have you heard of Helen Keller? Right?
Exactly.
So somehow her voice was heard. Her impact was made. Lives were shaped and are still being shaped today by the institutions that's in place and helping people in the deaf industry and beyond.
Right.
Right.
Right. And, you know, if you think about the voice as vibration or frequency, all of us have the ability to vibrate and send out a particular energy or frequency. And I deal with doing it in words because that's my skill and my talent. And that's how I know best how to create vibration. But there are people, monks and nuns in silent monasteries, who create that vibration by being in silence and continual prayer. They never speak a word, but their heart's voice goes out into the world.
Yes.
Think about the person who quietly sits at the bedside of a person at the end of life, when that person may be beyond conversation, but the vibration of that person's loving presence is still the voice of love and connection that says you are not alone in this transition. Maybe a voice that penetrates beyond even the unconsciousness of the person near death, but the energy is there, the vibration is there. So however we generate the vibration, there is that potential for the vibration to grow, to transcend, to connect, to multiply and magnify until it enters that one great vibration, which to me is the vibration of love. And that's what we're all growing toward.
Yes. Gail, we are almost out of time. I'm going to take myself down so that you can take the next 3 to 5 minutes to talk to the audience, okay?
Okay, great. So I just want to share with all of you the fact that I know that you were meant to be a messenger of something important. I believe that you were created for a sacred purpose, and that as you discover that purpose, you bring your life to joy and fulfillment. It isn't rocket science. It's simple. Sometimes it's not easy to hear your heart's voice. But when you take the time to deeply listen and honor the whispers of Source, the whispers of God that sit in your soul and being, you will find the voice that deserves to be amplified and magnified so that your life has meaning and purpose and supports the meaning and purpose of the lives around you. I believe that speaking with the heart is an act of courage, and listening with the heart is an act of love. Have courage, be love. Join me in the Heart's Voice movement. You can find us in a group on Facebook, and I look forward to hearing and seeing how each of you hears and expresses your heart's voice.
Thank you so much, Gail. This has been so rich, so wonderful. To those who are listening, please reach out to Gail, join her Heart's Voice movement group, and get connected with the individuals there, and especially get connected with Gail if you're finding yourself struggling with who you are, what your purpose is, but how to be bold and authentic in your truth and in your voice. The world is waiting to hear you, and however you choose to show up and vibrate. But we ask that you do so boldly and with encouragement, and that you choose to challenge anything that's trying to silence your voice. So with that, Gail, thank you again so much.
Thank you so much, LaWanna. It's been a pleasure.
To our listening audience, we look forward to seeing you back again next week on Choose to Challenge. Continue to follow us on E360 TV as well as Roku and Facebook, and we will see you soon. Keep challenging. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.